Because it's not right for Westminster to impose significant costs on hard-pressed families without a properly informed national debate.
When Sunak said the following,
That's why, third, we're making sure government stays out of your life. So the idea that government can tell you what to eat? Gone. The idea that government can force you to have 7 different bins in your home? Gone.
You said you wanted a better, more honest debate. You then went on and say, I've scrapped a series of proposals, you said.
people began asking, were these proposals for 7 bins and a meat tax even real to begin with?
So let me ask you about them. Where was this proposal for the government to put a tax on meat that you had to scrap with such a fanfare?
Yeah, there were a range of things that have been proposed by lots of different people in order for us to meet.
Where was the proposal for a tax on meat?
You mentioned the Committee for Climate Change earlier. I mean, actually, if you look in their reports, they talked very specifically about saying it's particularly important that we see an accelerated shift.
It gets worse as the blatant fabrication that these were proposals that were even being considered before they were gone, to use Rishi's words, were then taken and peddled by further Tories at the Conservative Party conference. Here Rishi is being taken to task by Nick Robinson on the Today programme.
In their words, in our diets away from meat and dairy.
But I've just spoken to them, I've just interviewed them, and they said there is no mention of a tax on meat in any of their reports.
If you look at their report, it talks about an accelerated shift away from dairy and meat.
That's not a tax on meat.
It said that diets will need to shift away.
It's no wonder that Labour seems so relaxed about taxing meat.
And then we have Net Zero Secretary Claire Cortino experiencing the same questions by Sophie Ridge on Sky.
I just want to read a bit of your speech to you, because there was one section of it that really struck me. You said, it's no wonder Labour seems so relaxed about taxing meat. So Keir Starmer doesn't eat it, and Ed Miliband is clearly scarred by his encounter with a bacon sandwich. You didn't write that, did you?
I did actually write that. I think, it's good to have a light moment in your speech as well. But the point is actually...
They're not proposing a meat tax.
The point is actually very serious. So some of the things that Labour are proposing are incredibly hard for working families. So whether you have things like...
meat tax? That's what you're saying here.
Well, so the point is, they are proposing things which are pushing families too hard. So you've got things like the ULEZ tax expansion, which does cost families £12.50 a day.
It's not meat tax, though, is it?
But that is very difficult. And they've got things like proposing that you would decarbonise the electricity grid by 2030, again, which would result in very difficult choices for families.
Not meat tax.
And then we have Michelle Donnellan being grilled by Victoria Derbyshire on Newsnight.
Well, it certainly is true. There are a lot of people that have been calling for a meat taxation. And is this government that have been stemming
I'm not going to let this go. There was never a proposal to use 7 bins. We can't find any council that wants to decide how often people can go to shops. And Labour have never proposed taxing meat. They are untruths, they are fiction, they are completely and utterly made up. And it's really disrespectful to voters.
Where was the proposal for a compulsory car sharing that you say you scrapped?
Again, you can, if you look in their report, it will talk very clearly about what they could describe as ride-sharing solutions.
Was the government considering forcing people to have 7 bins? Another proposal you said you've scrapped?
Yeah, so if you look in the Environment Act and the associated consultations that were in place around 2021 from memory, there's a very clear statement in there about moving to consistent collection for recycling.
That if you push people too far in this country, you will lose the cause of climate change, something that I'm passionate about because I think it's really important that we get there.
But genuinely, there isn't a meat tax.
Well, actually, if you try and push too hard, what you do end up with is people, and by the way, this has been part of the debate, talking about discouraging people from eating meat. Now, as someone who's worked in government for some time, I can tell you when people tell you that they want to discourage people from eating meat, what they mean
Where did
is
Keir
a
Starmer
tax.
say that?
I genuinely believe we are the party of facts and evidence.
I've just given you 3 pieces of fiction that members of your party have said in the last couple of weeks.
Well, I've heard members of the Labour Party advocating for those things. And
it was never a Labour policy, come on.
That wasn't the words that were used there. And I have heard members of the Labour Party advocating for those things and advocating for their party to campaign on those areas.
Is this how desperate the Conservative Party is now? You're making up stuff.
But hold on just a second. No, hold on a second, Prime Minister. You stand up with the authority of Prime Minister in this building and you say you're scrapping a series of proposals. And when I ask you about them, you say, oh, somebody considered and it was in the appendix of this document. There's nothing to be scrapped, which is why your former Environment Minister says you're pretending to halt frightening proposals that simply do not exist.
No, I reject that entirely.
So when they talk about moving at the pace that they're moving, what they're implying is that difficult choices will have to be made. And we know from having carefully safeguarded this debate that when people talk about trying to do things faster and quicker, they do talk about things like discouraging people from eating meat and changing their dietary requirements.
Keir Starmer's talked about people eating less meat, has he?
As you said yesterday in your speech, this isn't about politics. And yet, minutes after this, your party headquarters issued social media things saying Rishi Sunak has scrapped this, he scrapped that. There was a press release of the Labour Party. It's all about politics. You're making a series of claims that aren't true.
No, this is absolutely about doing what I believe to be in the long-term interests of the country.
Click here for a video on Sunak's latest advert.